What exactly is your role in the office of the president?
So I'm the Borough President's Director of Community Affairs and Constituent Services. So I head up a unit that includes 4 community liaisons, a Constituent Services representative, and a Deputy Director of Community Affairs and Constituent Services. So our unit is basically responsible, I guess you'd say we're the eyes and ears on the ground for the Borough President. We work very closely with community boards and the community-based organizations in the borough. We have 6 liaisons. Each one covers 2 community board districts. So 4 of those liaisons are down here. 2 work out of our Northern Manhattan office, which covers the part of the borough north of 110th Street on the west side and 96th on the east side. So those are community boards 9 through 12. So essentially, I cover community boards 1 through 8.
What do community boards actually do?
Sure. So community boards are actually, to give you a little history, they were created actually in the 1960s by then Borough President Robert Wagner, and they were a Manhattan-only experiment. The idea was that they would advise the borough president on matters in relation to the welfare of this district. And when Robert Wagner became mayor, he expanded this concept citywide, and then eventually in 1976, there was a charter revision that made community boards official city agencies. Community board responsibilities are very similar to borough president's responsibilities. They're responsible for the service delivery of their districts. They hold meetings called district service cabinet meetings. The board's district manager meets with the agency reps, and they discuss these local issues. When the issues become much larger, the district manager hasn't been able to get a response to that pothole. Maybe it gets kicked up to the borough service cabinet meeting, and now the borough president and the commissioner of transportation are talking about it, or on a different level. They also have a role in the ULERP process that I described earlier, and they also play a small role in advising and setting forth budget priorities for their districts.
So you essentially described great deal about your career, about your role here. Why did you decide to pursue a career in local politics?
After I graduated college, I was really upset about the direction that our country had taken on a national scene politically, and I thought the way I was going to change the world was to go travel across the country working with Acorn, registering voters, and it seemed to me that was the idea. So the night before I left, I was meeting with my friends. I didn't have a place to stay in Cleveland, but I was booked to go to the Cleveland Acorn Center. So I was going to sleep in the Greyhound station, and me being 22, I guess, or whatever, it seemed like a great idea, and I was like, yeah, I'll just sleep in the Greyhound station, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. I'd been cross country, and so my friend was like, you are really silly. Here's a number of my friend who lives in Cleveland, and he works for the John Kerry campaign. Within 3 days, I was a part of the Kerry campaign as a volunteer coordinator. They eventually put me in charge of a phone bank, which ended up being the top producing phone bank in the state of Ohio. And on a few occasions, we were top 5 in the country. One night, we were number 2 in the country. And so that really, even though I was incredibly disappointed with the outcome of that election, I got bit by the political bug.
Do you feel like the average citizen understands the mechanics behind local politics?
No, but I don't necessarily think that the average citizen has the time or necessarily needs to. I think one of the reasons we have Republic is so we represent people to basically we elect people to represent us in these discussions. That's the way our Republic works. That said, I think government should strive to make itself as accessible to people as possible and to break down those barriers. I think, for too long, the burden of understanding government, understanding the process has been on people, and frankly, government needs to start coming around and making itself more accessible. For instance, I had no idea what a community board was until I started on Scott's campaign, and which is kind of ironic because now I oversee the community board appointment process and work with them very closely. And I remember at the times, little decisions that I would see on my block, like, I see that restaurant now has a sidewalk cafe, or, how did that tall building get built in this neighborhood where everything's low rise? or, oh, this parking lot is now turning into a shelter. It turns out there's a whole world behind these conversations, and it's not for everybody. Not everyone has time for it, but I think people should know that there needs to be a greater effort made to inform people that these discussions are taking place. There's a role for them to give input and participate in the conversations, because ultimately, that's what shapes the neighborhoods.
So do you really blame people for not being too prudent about local politics and community affairs?
No, I wouldn't blame anybody for that. Frankly, until I, till I got involved, I had no idea. I'm informed now only because I've been doing this for 5 years. But, heck, 6 years ago, or whatever it was, I thought the way to change the world was to go hop on a Greyhound bus and go get people to sign a paper like that was going to change the world. So it's not, I would not, wouldn't blame anyone. I do think that government, though, in the age of technology, in the age of where now the city has this great thing called 311, where we have this, the capabilities of reaching, I send an email right now. No matter where you are in the world, you can get it on your cell phone. There are so many ways for people to receive information, and so there's less of an excuse for government to not be transferring as much information to people as possible. And I think that's really the next challenge, heading, for government and access, is how do we, with understanding, we live in an age of information overload. Not everybody wants it, and that's fine. And some people, they don't want it, and that's fine. That's the beauty of our societies. You don't have to, but for those who are interested, you should know that opportunity exists, and government should have it set up in a way that an information and notification system that's set up in a way that's reasonable.
How do you inspire young people to get into local politics, and what do you think are the barriers to political involvement?
Biggest barrier is time. It's time consuming. It is so time consuming, and it's a bureaucracy. It's a huge bureaucracy. But I think the best way for people to get involved is you have to make that commitment. It's I think on both sides, for the average person, whether it's just signing up on your community board's email list and once a month just sitting down and reading, okay, this is what's coming up, and when you can, dropping by those meetings, or even on a more local level, looking around, finding out, is there a block association on my street? You call up your elected officials, ask them, call your community board. If there is, join it. If there isn't, maybe start one. Go around, or if you live in a large building, see if there's a tenants association. If not, start one. I think it's great for folks just to band together, and when you band together with others, you can share the responsibilities. Of course, sometimes, it's rare that it's always an equitable distribution, but when people band together, you can accomplish a lot more without everyone having to carry so much weight. That's, I think, the best way for people to get involved. For young people, I think the best way is just to be involved, meet people, ask questions, to continually question things. And I think from the government side, it's, there's a certain accountability that the public should and must put on their elected officials. There are certain questions they should be forced to answer. And government needs to just, that should be embraced. And I would say the thing that I'm most impressed about Scott Stringer is how willing he is to embrace questions about roles of his office, government, and how willing he is to be taken to task for accountability and step up. That's government's piece to it. So people need to be organized, gather information, understand the process, but then they need to hold their leaders accountable and work with them.